Can I start by asking you to lay out for people listening the dilemma facing Donald Trump? There is a huge upsurge of protest in Iran, but it's unclear how American action could actually help the protesters.
Well, as you said, Andrew, the violence in Iran is escalating, and Donald Trump is encouraging Iranians to take to the streets, to take over the institutions of government inside of Iran. And he has made very explicit and public threats that if, in fact, this individual, this 26-year-old Soltani, is going to be executed, that there will be a heavy price for Iran to pay. But I do think Donald Trump is going to feel additional pressure to do something against the Iranian regime, even if Soltani is not executed today. He's given notice for some personnel, American personnel, to leave Qatar. We have the largest base in the region there, in al-Udeid. And so I do think they're looking right now at the options to take strikes, probably against Revolutionary Guard sites, whether it be barracks or command and control centers or some of their missile sites along the Gulf. But I do think the Trump administration is going to feel increasing pressure in the coming hours, if not days, to carry out some type of demonstrated support for the Iranian protesters.
Well, Mr. Brennan, I did want to ask you about the options, and you've mentioned one there. What about actually assassinating the Ayatollah?
Well, I hope that it doesn't happen, not in support of any type of assassination, but I could see that whether it be U.S. or Israel, they will try to maybe remove some of the senior leadership within the theocracy, as well as within the Revolutionary Guards, whether it's with standoff military strikes or close-up operations, I think is options for them to consider. But one of the things I think they're hesitant to do is just cause the ultimate collapse of the Iranian regime, which will lead to a protracted period of violence and chaos and confusion inside the country that could spill over into the neighboring region.
Is there a sense in Washington at the moment of, after Iraq, never wanting to go there again? In other words, an acceptance of the danger of pushing a country into civil war and the consequences of that?
Yes, the United States has not had a good track record as far as what happens in the aftermath of toppling a dictator, as you pointed out, in Iraq. And so if the supreme leader were to be deposed, I think the feeling here in Washington is that in the interest of stability and trying to calm the situation down, maybe a senior Iranian civilian, such as the president, Pezeshkian right now, might be able to take over the government and to be able to bring some type of calm to the country, rather than just a total collapse into utter chaos, which will lead to more and more bloodshed.
And if there aren't many sticks available, what about the carrots? In other words, if that happened, do you think that the sanctions on Iran could be lifted so that Iranian people in the street see a real difference?
Well, I think that would have to be part of some type of engagement with whoever follows this regime, that there would need to be some type of incentives offered. And as you pointed out, it's really on the economic front that Iran really needs help. It was because of the rapid collapse of the Iranian currency, the rial, that led to the current problems, because the merchants and the bazaar, they're the ones that actually initiated these strikes that then spread throughout the country and then were joined by students and others. So I do think that there needs to be some relaxation of the economic sanctions on Iran if the Iranian people are going to realize some type of advantage to some type of, follow-on government.
Yeah, you mentioned just now the withdrawal of some American troops from the region. How significant is that in your view? Is that a sign that, as European diplomats are suggesting, we could see American action within 24 hours?
I think it's a very serious sign. It's a signal to Iran that the Trump administration is serious. We withdrew some personnel from Qatar prior to the strikes that took place against the Iranian nuclear facilities last month. And also it's a way to get some people out of harm's way, because if there's going to be some strikes, the Iranians do have the capability to retaliate, either with missile strikes or terrorist attacks or whatever. So again, I think this is a prudent and cautionary move by the Trump administration.
Can I hop to another part of the world entirely and ask you about Greenland? And again, with your background, I'm sure you understand very clearly how important Greenland is to America's defense, and as the Arctic ice melts, how increasingly significant it becomes. But it is also part of the Kingdom of Denmark. What are the perils for the United States of literally trying to take Greenland?
I think the perils are great because it could lead to the fracturing of NATO or the dissolution of NATO. There's a treaty between the United States and Denmark that dates to 1951 that basically gives the United States the ability to do what it needs to do from a national security and international security standpoint. And we've had troops and bases in Greenland. We can increase that. The Danes have been very accommodating in terms of what it is that we might want to do there. The Danes have also been terrific allies in coming to U.S. support, whether it be in Afghanistan, Iraq, or other places. So I think it's foolish. It's unnecessary. It is counterproductive to U.S. national security interests for Donald Trump to try to acquire or annex Greenland. We could have these very productive discussions with the Danes to do what we need to do in order to strengthen the security and the defenses in that area to prevent Russia or China from taking advantage of that region.
Domestic question. The rest of us have been watching with some horror, frankly, some of the incidents involving ICE, not just the Minneapolis shooting, but also some very, very brutal-looking seizures of American citizens from their cars and so forth around the country. How serious do you think this is in terms of the reputation of American democracy and civil society?
Well, I think there's been a lot of things that have happened in the past year that really have undermined our reputation, both domestically and internationally, for being a country that adheres to the rule of law. There's been the weaponization of the Department of Justice going after critics of Donald Trump. As you mentioned, ICE is engaged in some very aggressive policies to try to rid this country of individuals who may have entered this country illegally. But the very aggressive posture that has led to violence and the death of American citizens, this is something that I think a lot of Americans are now getting fed up with. And so I think Donald Trump is losing support among even some of those individuals who had supported him in terms of trying to be tougher as far as border security is concerned. So I do think we are in a very dangerous place right now with the weaponization of a lot of the institutions of the U.S. government.
Joe Rogan, who is a very famous podcaster and a great supporter of Donald Trump, has just likened what ICE have been doing to the Gestapo. Do you think that's going too far?
Well, if you're on the streets of Minneapolis and you're getting dragged out of your cars or getting shot at, I don't think that's a comparison that goes too far. I think they feel as though these ICE agents are taking the law into their own hands and going well beyond it, and are engaging in activities that are far beyond what their responsibilities are and what the requirements are. So, saying that they're acting like Gestapo, not all of them. I mean, there's some very good ICE agents, but clearly, there are some who are taking their role and responsibilities way, way beyond what is needed for their responsibilities.
You mentioned the weaponization of the Department of Justice. On the show yesterday, we were talking about Jerome Powell at the Fed. You yourself are facing a sort of a fairly aggressive attack from, frankly, the world of Trump in the White House via the Department of Justice. Do you think there is a kind of persecution going on of people who have stood out in the past and spoken up against Trump?
Well, Donald Trump has been very public in terms of he is engaging in retaliatory actions against his critics. And he has an attorney general who is willing to do his bidding. And so he's going after people like Jerome Powell or Jim Comey and myself and many, many others, because he is very sensitive to any type of public criticism of him. And he's trying to silence individuals and trying to intimidate individuals. And so myself and many others are willing to stand up to him. But yes, it's very unfortunate. It's unprecedented in terms of what we have seen, in terms of how the Department of Justice is now using its authorities to go after individuals, which has led to the resignation of many, many individuals in the Department of Justice, U.S. attorneys and others, because they are, in fact, very much opposed to what Trump is trying to do to their department.
My final question, a domestic British one, if you don't mind. We've had a huge argument going on in this country about a proposed new Chinese mega embassy in London, which will have underground buildings right beside some of the most important and sensitive cables carrying information about Britain's financial dealings around the world, just a couple of meters away from the Chinese building. And people here are calling it a spy hub. And I know that the White House, certainly Washington, is worried about this. I just wonder, as an ex-CIA guy, what your view would be of the Chinese building a huge embassy right beside very, very sensitive cables.
Well, MI5 and MI6 are going to have their hands full because the Chinese are very rapacious in terms of their appetite for information, whether it be on security issues, financial matters, technology, and so on. They have very strong capabilities. They're highly technologically proficient, and they use their embassies, diplomatic presence in order to carry out these types of collection activities against countries such as the UK. So I think the British government can do things to try to restrict their activities at this mega embassy. But again, I just feel for my former colleagues at MI5
Sure.
and MI6 that are going to have to deal with very aggressive Chinese intelligence collection capabilities.
If you are able to have a friendly word with Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, would your advice be, don't do this?
Well, I don't know whether or not he can stop them from it would cause a real bilateral diplomatic row, but he can place limits on what the Chinese are able to do in that embassy in terms of the number of diplomatic personnel and other types of things. So I would tell the Prime Minister that he needs to be very, very prudent and judicious and cautious as far as what he allows the Chinese to do inside of the UK. And he does have formidable capabilities in the very professional services, the MI5 and MI6, and he needs to increase resources because their workload is going to increase significantly.
Very good advice there.